What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We have a very interesting market today. We have the stock market up over 2%, Bitcoin pulling back over 1%, Bitcoin dominance down, which is good for the altcoins usually. Ethereum down over 1%, pulling back from yesterday's pump. Total 3, which is altcoin market cap excluding Ethereum, actually up, okay, catching up to Bitcoin. So very interesting market today. We're going to be talking about why that is, because Bitcoin is going it actually has hit a critical level we're going to be talking about. And why is Bitcoin important? Because that is the driver of the crypto markets. You should be paying attention to Bitcoin first before any altcoin setups, because if Bitcoin dumps, chances are your altcoin setups are going to dump as well, at least eventually. Okay, that's why you should be paying attention to Bitcoin. And that's why we always talk about Bitcoin first on this channel. Now, on this channel here, we dive deep into the charts every day to look for setups before they actually move with technical analysis. And if you guys want to learn technical analysis so you can see this market much more clearly for yourselves, you guys should be subscribing, liking, and commenting on this channel. I will answer any questions. If you guys have any technical analysis requests, you guys want to see any altcoin markets, how I analyze the markets, make sure to drop a comment in the comment section below. I will pick one request every day to do on the video live for you guys. Now, we are also going to be taking a look into a couple of altcoin setups, such as Litecoin. Could Litecoin be pumping soon? We're also going to be taking a look into Optimism coin, right? And what else? I forgot. Okay. Optimism coin and Turbo coin. Okay, we're going to be following up on that, see what has been happening in these markets. And that's it. Let's go ahead and take a look and dive right into the charts here. All right. Bitcoin right now, we are seeing a pullback, and we've talked about this yesterday. This rising channel, rising wedge, whatever you guys want to call it, it usually ends up in a breakdown. Okay, and we're seeing that breakdown right now, and I talked about it yesterday. And since we actually broke down at this point, we do have a price target of about just right underneath 102,000 here. We have quite a bit. We have a couple of supports coming up, short-term supports. One of them is going to be the 6-hour 21 SMA. That is usually a support that Bitcoin bounces off of. Not exactly that it's going to bounce off of and continue going higher, but it's going to bounce, and we're going to chart it and see if we can get a hint on which direction it could be going. Right now, it is getting a bounce from the 6-hour 21 SMA here, so we're going to see what happens. And if Bitcoin actually continues higher, that would be good for the altcoins. And something to be also noting is that on the weekly time frame, we closed with a very solid candle close right above the weekly 21 SMA, which was at about 93,000. But right now we are getting a quite a bit of resistance here that you guys should be paying attention to, right? Because I talked about this possible rounded bottom scenario, and it could potentially form a cup and handle, right, before a breakout. But we are seeing some bearish signals right now, including bearish divergence. If we compare this high right here with this previous high right here, and we're seeing a lower high on the RSI, not something you should be ignoring because it usually ends up in a pullback. There are exceptions, right? Of course, the odds are usually in favor of a pullback. But I've seen massive breakouts where bulls would just invalidate this bearish divergence, namely back in November. If you guys actually compare the charts here, we also had another one back in 2020, 2021 monthly time frame. However, you guys see that the price action just continues going, even with bearish divergence on the RSI. So you just got to note both sides of the scenario, right? But also keeping in mind of the probabilities and what could happen, and risk manage accordingly. Daily time frame. Daily time frame, we're still looking very good because we're very well above the daily 200 SMA, well above, well ahead of the stock market if we're just talking about moving averages here. Let's see if it can actually keep that higher low going on this daily time frame. If it doesn't, then I'm going to try to find a higher low on the 3-day time frame for potential entry point ideas. Okay, I like entering on higher lows or double bottoms, right? Those are some of my favorite setups. Just me personally, not financial advice. None of what I'm saying here is financial advice, of course. I'm just saying it's a lower risk setup than other setups, like a higher high, right? All right, let's take a look into Litecoin. Okay, I currently have some Litecoin. Okay, and I am, of course, bullish on Litecoin because I'm still bullish on the crypto markets right now. I will tell you guys when I change my opinion, and I will tell you guys why. But right now, I am still bullish on the crypto markets. I think on the monthly time frame, on the RSI, which is a very important indicator that, in my opinion, that I use and I have used for the past couple of years of trading, I still don't think we are in. We have been in dangerous territories or very overbought territories for Bitcoin, as we have seen for the past couple of cycles, right? If we just compare these tops, I just don't think, this was it. This would call the end of the bull cycle here, based on these, just these very quick overbought RSI readings that are below 80. If we compare it to the past couple of cycles here, I think this is, I don't think this is it. But that is just me. That is just my opinion. What do I know? Now let's go ahead and come back to Litecoin here. Is Litecoin on the verge of a bull run? Well, I think if Bitcoin is on the verge of a bull run, I don't see why not the other altcoins, and especially Litecoin. Let's take a look into what Litecoin could be doing here. I've talked about this last time. It is not in overbought territory, so at least in that sense, it's still looking good. It is not at a high risk area, right? Price level, okay? And on the monthly time frame, we're still seeing higher lows, which is good. The last higher low was at about $83. We're not too far from that, but we are at some resistance, including the monthly 50 SMA, which is the white line here. Weekly time frame. Let me see if I actually charted this on another exchange here, so we don't have to go through this entire thing. Okay, so probably not. Okay, here it is. 3-day time frame. Let's see if we can actually connect the chart here. Here you go. Here you go. Last time we talked about this 3-day time frame, we had a falling wedge pattern. This was a bear trap because you see that the bears actually try to break down from this falling wedge pattern, and the bulls just completely bought this up and ends up back into the pattern here. That is a bear trap, right? When you see a breakdown, but very quickly it goes back into the pattern. Now, measure move. This is still valid. This falling wedge, if it breaks out by this point, this is the 3-day time frame. That's going to give us a estimated measure move of about $190, which is still pretty massive for altcoin. And that measure move is a give or take, right? It could be more, it could be less, but it's still a good idea to know where price action could be and take profits accordingly. Okay. Now, if the price action actually breaks out, which it usually does, right? And it actually gets to that measure move of $190, we can revisit this chart and see how Litecoin is consolidating at that level and see if there's going to be any more upside based on that, right? Let's take a look into a smaller time frame, see what Litecoin could be doing, right? I think that'd be interesting to actually look at a smaller time frame as well because, I mean, you can at least hold me accountable uh, into seeing how accurate some of these setups are, right? Let's take a look here. This looks like a falling wedge pattern. This looks like a falling wedge pattern that the bears actually try to break out of again, right? It was a falling wedge, very common pattern, especially after a run up. And we had the bears try to break out of this pattern, down from this pattern, but it just ends up back into it. Price target for this small falling wedge pattern. If it breaks out by this point, of course, if it doesn't, then just move the measurement down along the trend line or up along the trend line if this pattern still stays intact. You gotta know that even though it usually breaks to the upside, there's still a chance that it breaks to the downside and this pattern is no longer intact. Price target is going to be about $110 for this small pattern. 10% for Litecoin is still a pretty good target because it's a pretty big altcoin. All right, so this is what I'm seeing for Litecoin. Of course, none of these setups would matter if Bitcoin starts dumping. All right, let's take a look into Turbo, see what has gone on since the last time we've talked about it. Weekly time frame. Weekly time frame. Let me have the chart load real quick. I think it's still kind of lagging on Trading View. Could there be let me see here. It doesn't look like my chart is loading. I'm sure I did a chart here for Turbo here. It's just the last time. All right, let's just do it on the spot right now. Connect 3 candles at least for a validating trend line. Let's see if we get a validated trend line on a daily time frame. 12-hour. Okay, 12-hour time frame. This is still a valid falling wedge pattern. And it has broke out of it back at this point right here. It did take a dive after breaking out of it, but that is still valid. And sometimes that could happen. Okay, sometimes that could happen when you break out of a falling wedge pattern and price action still continues diving, right? But it is still above this upper trend line here. So that's why I still consider it to be valid. Price target for this is going to be about, based on this breakout point right here, price target is going to be about 1.1 cents, just right underneath 1.1 cents. So that's still a pretty good target for Turbo. I know it's still a decent sized coin, so it doesn't move as big as some of these smaller coins. All right, so let's take a look into a smaller time frame here. See what could be happening. Right, this looks like a bear flag. I mean, a rising wedge. Right, here you go. There's 3 connecting trend lines right here. You need 3 connecting candles and 2 valid swings. You got 1 swing, 2 swings, 3 swings. Okay, so that is a very valid rising wedge. And you take the measurement of the opening of the pattern and then you put it around the estimated breakdown point. Let's just say right here, measure move is going to give you about 4.1 cents. Now, this pattern usually breaks to the downside. Not saying it can't break up, but this is what to be watching out for when you have a rising wedge. Another thing to be paying attention to is that, Turbo did break above the weekly 21 SMA, but the weekly 21 SMA is downward sloping. When I see that, that usually means that, it makes it more likely that the price action would come down to retest that moving average, okay? Just from personal experience and observation. Let's take a look into, I forgot what the next one was. Optimism. Okay, Optimism. Let's see what has been happening in this coin here. Okay. So we did an update. We did an analysis on this coin a couple days back. See what has happened. Okay, anything has changed. Optimism, OP, USDT, or USD should be very similar charts. Okay, this huge falling wedge pattern, weekly time frame. If it breaks out by next week, if it does, then price target is going to be still above, just right above $5 here. Of course, it's going to take some time to get there. If it gets there, this is on the weekly time frame. Of course, if it doesn't break out, move the measurements down along this upper trend line. If this pattern doesn't break, right, to the downside, that is. Right now in this weekly time frame, it looks good. We had a very strong move here on the last week's candle. Right, just broke above the 3-day 21 SMA, which is the moving average there. Broke above the daily moving averages with a solid candle close 2 days ago. Talked about this pattern last time. Okay, it seems like it was on the daily time frame. Falling wedge, smaller falling wedge pattern. Price target about 79 cents. This time, price action broke above the pattern, went above its price targets. 4-hour time frame, what could this be doing? This looks like a little double bottom pattern on this 4-hour time frame, okay? If this double bottom pattern, it usually breaks to the upside, okay? Breaks to the upside, we get a price target just right here, about just right underneath $1 for OP USDT. That is what I'm seeing for some of these altcoins. Now, that's it, and that wraps up for today's update. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.